Well, hello and welcome back, my friend. This week, I'm joined by David Nordel. And David was in the Air Force for 30 years and as a command chief master sergeant. And that is a lot of responsibility. Like if you can't tell off of the level of that, David has seen a lot, David has done a lot, and he has led people in that role. And so his background and experience is going to be, again, over 30 years involved in combat situations, involved in just leadership and everything through there. So David is now doing consulting. He's written a couple books. I mean, the man is giving back and helping those of us who, are in a position where it's like, man, I want to elevate. I don't know how. I want to heal. Where do I start? He's kind of like that Sherpa, that guide. He's walked the path. He's helped other people. And now he's, kind of given that hand up to access a different position, a different way in life. And so, David, I appreciate you joining me. How are you doing today, my friend?
It's funny that you use the word Sherpa, and because you said guide, but you know what Sherpas do? Sherpas help carry the load, and it's usually uphill.
And it always seems to be in very severe weather.
I appreciate the descriptive because there's figurative and literal application to that. Hey, I'm doing Max Fab. I am doing Maximum Fabulous. And today's great. And I'm glad to be here with you, Mike. We just had probably about a 10 or 15 minute conversation before we started. So I'm excited to share and excited to, help people grow. And this stuff is always good for guys like you and me too, no matter where we're at in our journey. So there you go.
100%. I mean, it's encouraging, it's inspiring, and it's almost like a reality check, right? We get to bounce off of each other and just go, yep, it's not just me. There is another way, and learning along the way, because it's like, I may do something in one manner and you're going to do it in a completely different. Neither of them are necessarily wrong. One may fit the personality and the situation better. And so I think it almost adds like to a toolkit, right? It's the hammer and the screwdriver. They both got a place. Where do you apply them and how? So
right.
I love conversing with other people about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you bet. Every journey is not the same. However, there's pathways out there that we don't even know that are open to us. So sometimes through these conversations, you can see other pathways, other ways to get to the same place. And it gives you options, and that's the best. And then the sharing, right? There's the old cliche of misery loves company really applies.
It definitely does. Believe me, I found enough people that were feeling miserable and just helped to pile that on. It became like, it was comfortable in its discomfort because I knew what it felt like.
Sure.
Well, let me jump off here and start off by asking, what does life look like for you today on the professional side of life, Dave?
On the professional side, it's really all about giving back. I'll tell you, even recently, as recently as about 24 hours ago, I have had a lot of significant events happen to and for and around the people that I know, intimately through my life. And some of these are death. Some of these are death, and they're death at what we would call a younger age. And you start to feel your mortality. And, people will say in kind of a flip manner, you got to live every day like it's your last, and, you never know when, it might all be over and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's all fair, but I want to turn that around a little bit because this is really where I'm at. I'm at a state when I wake up every day that I say, okay, I've got all these nuggets from all these years and some of the things you mentioned earlier. Who's going to get them and how am I going to give them back today? And that, because we only have so much time is finite. And so we only have so much of that. We only have so much effort. We only have so much energy. And quite frankly, the older you get, your energy is different. I won't say that you run out of it or you don't have capacity, but your energy is different. And so where are you going to put that energy? Because you only have so much. A guy like me, people that know me well would say to you, they'd say, hey, Mike, Dave is, he never stops moving. But I will tell you that people that knew me when I was 25 would say, Dave slowed down a lot. So it's all that perception, but you only have so much energy. So where am I at in life? I'm giving back. I'm looking outside of myself constantly. I'm working on my relationship with the Lord every single day because, heavens knows I'm a sinner and I'm going to need work all the way up to the last day. And through that, by improving myself, I get to improve other people's positions. And I'm not out there looking for misery or people that are going through things that I've gone through. I'm not out there looking for that, but I'm out there. And somehow, there's plenty to do. And so in there comes, what attitude do I wake up with every day? And my attitude is that I'm going to make a difference in some way, small or big, every single day. And that's how I raise my boys. And if you ask my boys today, what do you need to do today? It's make a difference in some positive way. And so that's where I'm at. And it's actually a pretty awesome place to be. And I have the capacity to do that. And so we move forward and we use whatever time we have left in a way that leaves whatever dust trail that you leave. It's positive and it's productive and you leave good seeds and grow better people than we are. So, yeah.
Yeah. And in listening to you there, it's like, purpose, vision, awareness, and, also being aware, like you said, the limited time where it's like we can just kind of haphazardly wander through. You're being very intentional and purposeful in what you do. And I mean, that just makes such a difference. I've done both sides and I will tell you what you're doing and how you're doing it. That is absolutely just like a life changer, in being aware of what's going on around you and where you're at, enough to say, yeah, my energy is different now than it was at 25, but I'm still, engaged and running. So I really love that.
I had a guy on my podcast who's he's the CEO of our community economic development, and we got to talking about, because we had some similar life situations, losing a parent. We both recently lost a parent, and we're similar age, and we were talking about this bell curve in life, right? And so when you're born, your bell curve is kind of flat, and then you start up the bell curve, and that's career and family and what am I going to do and the new job and education, all those things, right? College, all that stuff. If you go to college or trade school, whatever you're doing, right? And all those type of things. And at some point in time, you get to the top of that bell curve, whatever that looks like. That's usually in your late 40s and early 50s. That's when you're the director of or the CEO of whatever aspirations you wanted. In my case, probably being a command chief, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then we start down the back end of that bell curve, right? That's when you start looking towards retirement and those type of things. And this bell curve can apply to anything other than just life in general. And a lot of people think that when you hit the bottom of that bell curve, it sounds like something like 65 and I'm on Social Security and I get up in the morning and I play 18 holes and put my feet up, right? And that's nice. And some of us do that. And I'm guilty of living that lifestyle occasionally during the year. But really what there is there's two bell curves in life. And as you're pinnacling off of that second bell curve, and this goes along with recovery from some of the things we're going to talk about. As soon as you come off that second bell curve, you need to be setting yourself up for the next bell. The next bell curve is shorter and it's not as high, but there is a next bell curve. And what are you going to do with that? And so, when you ask that question, I would say that I am on the upside of the second bell curve.
Yeah. And I will say, having lost 3 of the, 4 parents between my wife and I, man, like you can set yourself up to be able to, traverse it in a healthy manner versus medicating as you go through it. Right. So there's 2 ways to go through it. One that, you're strong in it. The other one that it's a strongman situation and you're not coming out on top. Well, let's jump onto the personal side, David.
Sure.
What does the personal side of life look like for you?
So I've been married 31 years. I had a 5-year marriage before that. And, when you're serving, like I did, when you're personal, there's not a lot of personal when you're in the military. There's not a lot of personal side. The first two things they beat out of you when you go to the United States military are the words I and me. And so you're always working for what is a higher purpose and usually somebody or someone else. And so personally right now, I'm in a second growth spurt. I'm in the Indian summer of life. I mean, the sun is shining and I'm growing and working on that and putting myself in positions to grow, which sometimes it's just people around you or what you're consuming, as far as what, and what you're listening to, what you're reading and those type of things, what you're exposing yourself to, the conversations you're having, who's in your inner circle. We talked about our life teams earlier. We'll probably get to that, those type of things. And I think that, I think as of right now, with some clarity, we'll talk about, the journey to this point. There's a little bit of magic to clarity when you start to eliminate these things you thought were necessary for you to function. The three greatest shepherds of men who are struggling, whether we all men struggle. If you think that there's a man out there that's not struggling, it's just you're nuts. But the three greatest shepherds of men are Jim, Johnny, and Jack, or their Irish cousins. And because they're easy, right? They're about the most reliable friend you'll ever have. They never disagree with you. They always show up and they get you right where you want to be, at least for the moment. And that's just the easy way. And a lot of times when we look at things and we say, boy, that's really, that looks hard, or, fear and pain are the two things that keep us from progressing. Sometimes it's easier just to melt into those areas. And I've reached a level of clarity now where I don't have those distractions. And so personally, I think I've set myself up to achieve, personal, growth and development and have some calmness within me, and then to forgive myself and then give myself grace before I give anybody else grace. And all of those things that as men, we just terribly, we stink. We're awful. We're awful. At the same time that we want to be angry and lash out at the world, we're yelling at ourselves. In fact, when we're yelling twice as loud at ourselves. And I think you and I are going to talk a little bit about anger, because I just this week had a family reach out to me because they were concerned about their son. And the precipice of their concern was this unbridled anger that they'd never seen in him before. And he's going through a really rough time in life. And then I was explaining to them, I said, we never get it. The reason that we're angry is because we either feel betrayed or out of control. And what are we supposed to be as men? Totally in control. The holder of the sword, I've got the shield, all of those type of things. And when we can't control that, the first emotion's anger. And I think we never get stuck out of that. We never get out of that. And then when you're angry all the time, your relationships deteriorate. When you don't have relationships, you don't have help, and you're not going to get out of any of this stuff without help. And so it's just this self-licking ice cream cone, this cannibalistic thing that goes on along, and it's not healthy. So I am fortunate enough that I've transitioned these things, and I think that we're going to talk about some of it, specifically, but I've transitioned in these things that where I'm at now because of this clarity. I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing max. Fine.
There you go. So when you look back and PTSD was something like that, you've experienced and gone through, do you often see that tied with like the anger that, you're seeing this young man, it exhibit? Is that something that's usually tied with that PTSD?
Well, so, I write and talk about it, and they've actually published PhD level literature with my mortal injury story on that very university, which people can get. I can send those links to you electronically, and people can download that, and that's all free, and they can read through that and the stories in depth, and I might share some of that with you. PTSD and moral injury run separately, but the one thing that I think they have in common is that it drives the anger. Because think about it, and you and I have talked about it. If you have PTS, you're addicted to alcohol, you need anger management, you gamble too much, pornography is huge in the male population at certain ages. I mean, it's just a thing. If you have those things, look, there's a couple things. One is, if you're violating what you were programmed morally and ethically, and this is where your parents are at, when that gets violated, you get mad. Why? Because men operate off of this trust, right? This bond of honor, this handshake agreement thing. This, I looked him in the eye and I shook his hand, and by golly, he was lying to me. So, I'm mad, right? Well, it's no different. It's this internal struggle that anger comes out when we feel betrayed or out of control. And quite frankly, what you just described is a level of betrayal, because I'm supposed to be this. This has happened to me. I'm not processing it. It's chemically screwing me up. It's mentally screwing me up because I'm not built to process this, right? So you got to understand, we operate on chemicals. The good Lord, when he created us, put all these chemicals in there, and he said, this is balanced, right? And so, one too many pinches of salt will make the soup taste bad. And so we need to be balanced, and PTS and moral injury throw us out of balance because it throws us out of our touch with reality, and it throws us out of our touch. It throws us out of balance even chemically and emotionally, and our heart rate and all that stuff. Everything changes. And when we feel mildly out of control as a man, we're mad. We figure that if we yell loud enough, or as we were talking about, use 7 profane words all in a row, and there's a noun and a verb and an adverb and an adjective and an exclamation, all of that's in there, and it's just totally profane weighted. Then for some reason, that's like some magic oil that will shake away the demon. And that's not the case. And so I think anger is the number one most manifested thing. And I think in relationships, when the male, so I'll get a little deep here. If you're a woman and you meet a man and anger is part of the early relationship, you really need to think twice about the longevity of that relationship, or the person needs to get some help. Number one. Number two is, if you are a man and you have been, pretty even keel most of your life, and all of a sudden you start exhibiting anger, it's no different than catching you drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. It's the same thing. It's just how we're dealing with it.
Well, I was just looking back on that anger because I was that guy. It's like Eeyore and the Hulk, right? And that Hulk was absolute rage. I think the hard part in it also, David, was the more subtle part. I was mad at myself for being allowed to be gotten, right? To being able to be betrayed. But there's also that shame of what will everybody think, in the fact that I wasn't in control enough and didn't have my guard up to stop that. And it was like both sides of the spectrum. There's that internal and that external directed rage that came from those situations where it was like, gosh dang it. And I think it was easier to take care of addressing the external part. The harder one to let go was like that internal aspect, where it was like, how did I allow myself to be here? And then there was all the degrading, self-deprecating talk that went on internally that, just continued to pile on, man.
Well, let me give you an example. I mean, this is for your listeners. This is you and I talking, but let me give you an example. I grew up in Northern California, rural Northern California, in the middle of nowhere, in a dairy farming community, on a dairy farm. What do you think was told to me as a young man when I fell down? What do you think was told to me when I said I was tired? What do you think it was told to me when I said I can't lift that? What do you think the words were? And you're talking generation upon generation upon generation.
Yeah.
And anything short of exhibiting what those words were rub some dirt on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're a fill in the blank because you can't lift that bucket. That we don't have time to be tired around here, tired this week, right? And if you showed any sense of need or asking for help, you got picked on because you couldn't cut your part of it, or you couldn't lift, you couldn't throw 10 80-pound bales in 2 minutes like your cousin. So you were lesser of the man and you were always being graded and stacked upon. When you take all of that, because most of us have certain similar experiences, when you take all of that and you go out into the big world and the big world puts these challenges on you, the last thing that crosses your mind is to walk into a room and say, I'm weak and I need help. I can't lift. And so what happens? You get mad. And then, so when you get mad and then that self-talk that you talked about, when it gets going so fast, there's like a couple of ways to shut that off. One is to exercise until you vomit, and 2 is to drink until you vomit.
Mm.
And most guys pick the alcohol or some sort of numbing agent.
Yeah. There's usually some kind of medication that goes along with it. There's a whole bar full of different options, but yeah, there's usually something we'll lean to. With that having been the way you grew up and the messages that you got, David, as you began to experience stuff, how did you decide to start dealing with things in a healthy way rather than just kind of pushing it off to the side, ignoring it, or medicating for it, but instead addressing it and taking it on,
Sure.
directly?
Sure. This is the part where your listeners all lame in because they think I'm going to give them the 5 whys or the 7 hows or the 12 habits. And I will tell you, I almost died.
Mm-hmm.
The turning point was near death. You and I are talking right now so that the people who are listening don't have to get where I had to get and get a second chance. I got sloppy when I retired. I was still mad about a lot of things. This military transition, which is a lot of my work, this military transition thing, the last 10 years of being out has probably been harder than the 30 years that I served in a lot of ways, especially psychologically. And I got sloppy and I started to feel sorry for myself. I was mad. I was drinking probably 1 or 2 or 10 more too many beers daily. All of that stuff was going on. And I threw a huge blood clot out of my leg. I had a clot from my groin all the way to my ankle, and it all went in my lungs. Mm. And quite frankly, the odds on that, I had a saddle PE. It was huge. And one of the clots was, it was, an eighth of an inch from being totally occlusive, and that would have been just lights out, right? And so I'm sitting in the ER, a place very familiar to me because I've spent hours and hours and hours of my life in that environment. I'm sitting in the ER in the bed, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this clot could have been genetic. I might have a clotting disorder, and I'm gonna have to look at that. And I said, that I don't control, but there's a lot of things I do control. And if I don't get control over those and take all of this energy that's inside of me and flip the polarity on it and make it positive to start marching towards this place that I just described to get to, I'm done. There is no second bell curve. It's a flat line, and it doesn't have a lot of longevity to it. And it's not going to do the people I love and care about. It's not going to do them any good. And doggone it, here I am with a whole sack full of goodies to give to the world, and nobody's going to get any of them because I'm stuck in this rut. And that was it. It's been 2,122 days. And it's just over 6 years and 2 weeks or whatever. Since I had a drink, and with the elimination of these elixirs, we'll call them these elixirs of life. With the elimination of that comes this clarity. My Monday morning celebrations in the shower when I go, wow, I'm not sitting here thinking how I'm going to get rid of this fog in my head and make it through the day because, I just I totally abused myself on a Sunday because I didn't want to face Monday, whatever that is. And once I got that level of clarity, two things happened right out of the gate, Mike. Number one was I thought, okay, I quit doing this thing that I've been doing for a long, long time. And I've got, I've cleared up in my head and I kind of see some ways forward. And instead of stepping out and marching out and saying, I got this, and because I'm a guy and I got it. Instead of saying that, I went, I need help. Help beyond the people that love me and are going to help me. I need actual help. I mean, literal help. It's like building something and you go, I can't get this finished unless I have somebody come out here and hold this. It's just physically impossible to do the two jobs, right? How many guys have scars on their hands because they tried to do that by themselves because they didn't want, and that's just basic asking for help to finish building something. And we don't do it, right? And somebody goes, oh, how'd you break your ankle? Oh, I should have asked for help. It's the first thing that comes. Well, I should have, you don't even know the story of it. I should have asked for help, but they didn't. So we need to understand that it is so counterintuitive to us to literally sit down and ask for help. So when I went and looked for a therapist, I needed somebody that I thought could understand all the nuances, PTSD, combat, travel, having a prism on life that's very broad and it makes me forgiving in a lot of areas. And I consider myself diverse and inclusive and at a level that, I really don't care what people look like or where they're from or what their religions are. If they have an accent, they're just all human beings. So we got to operate at that level. And I needed somebody that can understand all of that, but I needed a critical evaluator. I didn't need somebody to hug me anymore and tell me that they love me and ask me 10 times over and over and over, what can I do? I needed somebody to tell me, here's what you need to do. Here's what boundaries look like. Number one, here, it's almost like parenting. Here's what boundaries look like. Here's the type of the things that you need to surround yourself with. Here's the things that you need to think about. Forgive yourself. If you're graceful, be graceful to you first. Now understand that you're imperfect. I mean, we're sinners. We'll be sinners till the day we die. It's just who we are. And so we have definitely, when you cross, those are the two bridges, clarity and help. And when you can, and you don't have to achieve them, that doesn't have to be in that order. You can achieve clarity by getting help. And you can get help by achieving clarity. So don't think that there's no checklist to this. But people know when they have fog, and whatever it takes to eliminate the fog, when you eliminate the fog, you will start making a positive change. And when the positive change comes, it is just like freaking freight train. And it's almost impossible to stop because it feels so good.
One mistake I have made when I did have that clarity and knew I needed help is I wasn't willing to follow through with the guidance that I was given. And I know it's not just me. There's other men, clients and friends that I've worked with. How did you put yourself in that place to be open to, like, when that person that's counseling you or coaching you, David, they say you need to go do X. You then go do X rather than getting angry at them and going, I don't want to do X. I want to go do Y. How did you put yourself in that place?
Yeah, I let the therapist one day I was so pissed. I came home and I told my wife, I called my kids, I told my wife, I said, you know what? You guys have all been violating my boundary. I took everything they were all, I was just mad. I was mad again, right? I was mad. And really what it was I was addressing them with anger about the fact that I felt weak because I couldn't control my boundaries. And it just seems like it's such a simple thing. And these things that you have no control over that you let affect you because you let that affect you. So for instance, you and I will probably vote in 100 and however many days and when the election comes. And that's our part. But I can't let polling numbers or rhetoric or a speech or some news station, I can't let that blow my life up. I can't let my poorly mannered cousin make me lose sleep at night. Those people need to be outside of that. So I got mad. So to answer your question was, you have to forgive yourself first. There's no retake, Mike. There's things in the last 50, almost 59. There's things in the last 59 years that I am not proud of, that I could have done better, that put me in a spot where I needed to do this extra work to get back to, back to where I needed to be. I cannot change that stuff. So you have to forgive yourself. That's through grace and some other things. The other thing is that if I sat here and told you every hiccup in my life that shaped me, if I did that, they would sound like all your hiccups. Except if it involved a person, the name would be different. If it involved food, it would be fish and not steak. But it would be the same. It's the same thing because life is not easy, and we all have to traverse it. But some of the big boulders in life that come flying at you, it's only because they flew past me, and you're just a little farther down the hill, or vice versa. It's the same boulder, and so we've experienced these things. So forgive yourself. Understand that you could have done it better. I'm sure that you've been faced with that's the same challenge a second time and knocked it out of the park because you have experience. And understand that and cherish each and every one of those for what they are, which is a nugget, that you can pass on. But once you forgive yourself, then you can stop for, getting right to the edge of, I'm going to do it. It's no different than, think about this, Mike. On Monday, I'm going to start a diet. On Monday, I'm going to start going to the gym. This all sounds like New Year's, right? I'm not going to drink diet soda anymore. And what do we do? What do we do when we don't follow completely through? We come up with the 10,000 reasons why it's okay to have one soda on Friday. And then pretty soon you're just drinking soda all day long, back to where you were at. Well, because there's some level of guilt there. You got to give yourself grace. I said that to a retired Army buddy of mine. He's a doc, special forces doc. And I said, I see so much grace in you and you're so forgiving to everybody around you. I said, except for you. And about a week and a half later, he wrote me back and he goes, man, that was kind of powerful. I said, that's just reality. It's just who we are. And men, we don't cut each other. The hardest evaluator of a man is the man, not anybody else. And oh, by the way, women think we're silly. Women think we're like primal, like we're at a Cro-Magnon level. What are you worried about? Well, somebody might think this about me. Why would they think that? So women that care about you in your life, they can't even feel this thing that goes on. And so, they give you the most grief because they just think that we're silly. So we got to get over ourselves. We got to forgive ourselves and move forward in a positive way. We got the right people around you, that are willing to give you some tough love and real love, real hugs and those type of things when it's appropriate. You can conquer a whole bunch.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference in who you surround yourself with, because like you talked about, when we look in the mirror, that can be our worst critic, the one with the least grace. And we just look at ourselves like, why aren't you perfect? But David, I would look at you and go, I know you're not perfect. And yet look at myself and go, dude, I'm expecting you to be perfect. Like we have these opposed perspectives and expectations, and they just don't add up.
I wrote a chapter in my book that talks about, because, the book is a lot of corollaries between farm animals, leadership in combat, and then life in general. And the title is that people cry on the farm. And if you've ever been around farmers, you'll understand they're the toughest people in the world and they don't normally tear up. It takes a lot for them to do that. And I went through a time during my last combat tour where I was in a leadership position that I had made a rule for myself that everybody else could cry, especially when we had major casualties, and we were doing, ceremonies for people that we couldn't save. And I won't go into the description of that, but it's a thing. And it's forever etched in you, especially after really long days when you're not tired. And we went through that a lot. And my rule to myself was, if I cry, then it will be a crack in the organization because of where I sat in the leadership chain. People are looking at me to take their cue. However, I always noticed in those situations, I was the only one that wasn't crying. And Mike, that damaged me for the rest of my life. And it doesn't matter how hard I cry now, I should have cried then. And this thing, this thing that we live in, this flesh that we are of, crying is an emotion. It's not weak. It's an emotion. People love to be laughing. Oh, look, he's laughing all the time. He's happy. And people say that, oh, you look so happy. Why are you so happy? Nobody comes up to you very often and says, why do you look sad or why are you crying? In fact, people walk away when you're crying because we have this stigma that's a shameful thing. Actually, it's a purging. It's no different than anything else that we do to purge. And if the emotion drives you to tears, then cry, doggone it. And if somebody is around that's judgmental that goes, oh, you're a crybaby, or they say something, because we all have heard it, they're off the life team. All you need to tell them is, you are not part of my life team at a level that you get to give me that feedback. Because one, you're wrong, and two, you're not doing me any good. You're sucking off of me. So from now on, here's your new space. Do that a couple of times. And your life team gets really small. And for people like me that like these big, I like people around, your life team gets really small, really fast. And I'll give you an example. I had a guy, I was out in North Dakota with a friend who just lost his wife. I told you I've had a lot of that going on. And I did the obligatory, how can I help? And he said, I think you coming out and visiting and being present would be great. So I took off and drove out there and luckily I got to see my granddaughters while I was out there too, which was great. But we were talking to the guy during that trip that we met, and he was just going through a really ugly divorce. Mad. Felt like a failure. I did everything I thought a man should do to set up our lives the way she wanted, and she ended up running off with somebody else. Long story short is, he needed to forgive himself for anything he thought was an indiscretion, because it really wasn't. He had done everything that he could do, and that other person would put him in a rough spot. And then he says to me, as far as we're talking, he said, wow, man. He goes, you sure find out fast who your friends are. He has in life, he has a whole new different definition of friends. Well, we need to front load that definition. People, you're the men that are listening to this podcast, and if there's women, help. You need to go reevaluate everybody that's in your inner circle and ask yourself two questions. Do they contribute or do they take? And if they take, do I get back? And if the answer to those last two questions is a yes and a no, they got to go. And sometimes that looks like your brother. I'll say this because he's going to listen to this, but he'll smile because it's been a growing thing for both of us. My oldest son, he got fired off my life team for a while because I had to reset the boundaries. Now, how do you think that phone call went? But I have the ability to forgive myself, and I'm in a space where I know that that's the right thing to do, so I do it.
And that's a hard conversation. I mean, my parents, they were not in a healthy place, and had a conversation with them. They decided they didn't want to change. And so, like you're talking about with, a life team and boundaries, there were boundaries that were put with them to protect not only myself, but also my family. Mm-hmm. Both from my parents and the way that me interacting with my parents triggered, anger, negative emotions within me. So it was kind of a twofold deal. But I love the way you said it was for a while. You're still in control, and you still get to decide and assess, hey, have you changed? And are you able to be a part of my life in a healthy way? So it's not, you're off the island and never able to come back. Mm-hmm. It's, hey, if you want to work on you and you want to reconcile and come into my life in a healthy way, we can start moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. How do you look at the people around you, friends, family, coworkers, just the people that are surrounding you, and decide, yes, you're in a place that I would like you on my life team? How are you assessing that? Is there something that goes beyond those two of, are they a giver or a taker? Are you looking at, are they good in finance? Are they good in
Mhm.
relationships and these different things? And do you give them certain authority for different parts of your life?
I want you to watch my podcast with Dave Kitchen.
I appreciate it.
He does such a good job at answering this question. And so he has concentric circles of his life. And so, so he has people that are layered in their lifetime, and they all understand exactly where they are in their life. So, and so like I said, I'm going to butcher this. But so you think about golf buddies, right? Golf buddies are golf buddies, and if they're, we've been talking about alcohol, but if they're beer drinking buddies or whatever it is, right? Golf buddies are golf buddies. But not everybody, just because you play golf, gets to sit down with you and work problems and solve things and those kind of things. His next circle in is these people you just described. People that you're willing to open up your finances to and say, hey, look at this, and so you're sharing a significant thing in your life with them, but their expertise is there and they give and hook, but it still has to be a give and give, a giving a relationship. And then there's those people. And then there's the people that have the right to tell you things about you. The people that say, you know what, Mike, I love you, man, but you're gaining weight. I'm concerned about you. I think, you might, well, whatever that is, right? And those people have actually earned the right to be able to give you that feedback because they've earned enough respect from you that you know where that's coming from. Because I have family members that if I walked in a room today that I haven't seen for quite some time, they would find something negative about my appearance and say it out loud in front of 100 people. And you think, that was the most inappropriate, cruel thing that anybody could do. You're off the life team. They're not even in the golf buddy match, right? They're in the sin bin. Just go away. Just, you're not contributing, and I've done that. I've had those people that are like that are like, hey, let's go play golf. And I use golf as an example, but hey, let's go play golf. And you think, gosh, I want to go play golf, but I don't want to play golf with you. And I definitely don't want to ride in a golf cart with you for 4 hours.
Well, and that's, man, David, I was that negative person like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because at that point in my life, by putting you down, I temporarily, and a very temporary, felt elevated. I'm better than what I feel. And it's just smoke and mirrors. There's nothing there to it. I'm not changing my position. It's a false emotion that's just very fleeting. And it's hurtful. Like that was the part that I knew was going on, but at least I wasn't the one that was on the receiving side of the hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Totally selfish. But there are those people, whether they're friends or their family, definitely on or off the life team. And it's just like, hey, if I don't feel like I can reveal myself to you, David, then, that should be a good indicator. How do I think you would respond to, hey, I've got this issue, here it is. Are you going to berate and belittle me? Sorry, not life team material. Do I think you're going to come at me with a firm yet kind of like, hey, Mike, that's not the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I think you know that. Cool. Then as long as it's the heart's there, but it's almost like, getting reprimanded, right? If the heart's there and you're trying to put me on the right path, dude, we're in line. That's what I need, because there's going to be those times where it's like, I screwed up. Yep. David, I need to be called out.
And that's the key to leadership. And we won't do the leadership conversation today though, but people want to be disciplined and they want to be disciplined with heart. And if you can figure that out, people will follow you to the end of the world. The bullets. You talked about something there that is extreme. You asked about diagnostics. How do you pick people? Preemptive people I don't get close to anymore. And preemptive in the means that you just described. So somebody that will walk into a room and go, oh, that guy's mustache is too long, or, geez, it looks like he's gained a little bit of weight. And I don't need those people around. They're preemptive because they have so many insecurities of their own that they're preemptively. So guess in our society, we actually have a problem right now, and it's not even at the adult stage. We have a problem right now And when we address the problem, we're focused on the victim, and we should be focused on the perpetrator. And that's bullying, especially in our adolescent population. These kids that bully, they're already broken. No self-esteem. I don't know what their parents are telling them or any of those type of things, but they are bullying because they have such a lack of self-respect and self-image that's what causes them to bully. And usually that comes along with the physical stature that enables them to do that on the physical side of things. And we worry so much about the victim. And actually we should go up to the bully and say, I feel really sorry for you where you're at. And we need to probably start working on some things to build up your self-confidence, because people with self-confidence don't do that to other humans. Because I believe that 99.9% of humans wake up every day and want to do something right. They don't want to go out and hurt anybody or damage things and those kind of things. But our life situation sometimes makes us, we want to survive. We wake up every day and we go into survival mode, right? We brush our teeth, drink water. We do all these things that we have to maintain ourselves, and sometimes emotionally to maintain ourselves. We make poor choices. And so when people are in that state, they can't be on my life team, because I'll contribute to them. They'll get it. Okay, if you're on my life team, you get the whole smash. Sometimes it's yucky. It's almost suffocating. But I know that it's going to be worth it, because it's going to come back the other way when I need it.
100%. Yeah. The ones that are giving are usually the ones that it's like will walk that path and are open to being walked with when they're in that kind of situation as well. So it's it's not just one way. They want you to show up for them as well. So
sure.
David, I so appreciate the fact that you have shared that it's like where we are is not like this life sentence and where we're stuck forever, but we can decide, hey, yeah, I need help. How do I get help? And then being intentional about being open to take action on the help that we receive, putting up the boundaries, looking for that life team, and being willing to be on somebody's life team as well. So dude, those are just so powerful, David. And I appreciate all that you've shared today. And I know this is just a drop in the bucket.
You bet.
So with guys, if they're like, hey, I want to take in more of what David has to share, how can they reach out to you outside of the podcast?
Get on getfatready.org. That's the new nonprofit that is spawned off of MaxFab. Or you can go to MaxFab, MAXFAB consulting.com. You'll see some similarities there. The blogs are there, the podcasts are there, but there's two big things. I mean, you can donate to the cause to help the veterans from where we standpoint, but the bigger piece is just click on the contact thing. You need schedule an hour, 30 minutes or whatever. And, I'm not gonna send you a bill, especially if you want to talk. And I don't mind doing that. Even if it's just to get a different perspective. I don't have all the answers. I just have a journey. And in my journey, there's some nuggets, and I'll be more than happy to share them with anybody that is at a point in time where they're ready to talk. Mike, we didn't hedge on some of the poor decisions that we make, but I have yet, and I've been close, but I have yet to find a reason for anybody to take their own life. And so if anybody out there is even close to thinking about that, what I need you to do is to totally capitulate and just open up your heart and mind and soul and let somebody walk in and help you, because there is hope and there's hope and there's people out there that want to help you and give you hope. So if you're ever at that point, stop what you're doing, pick the phone up, find me, find Mike, do something, one way or another. So yeah, go to the websites. The books are there. You can get the books. The books are written for kind of what your mission is here, Mike. And that's just to keep people introspective and thinking and understand that there's alternatives and we're all in this together and we're walking the same journey and the potholes all look the same and we've all twisted our ankles. So
100%, man. Yeah. David, thank you so much for joining me and sharing everything that you have, my friend.
You bet, brother.